Intact Lab is it's a small startup in a large company which is made from creators, UX designers, UX strategists, product owners, and mobile engineers. We have also a friend with us today from HR who was saying he doesn't want to miss this opportunity. We have a couple of opportunities for careers also open in Intact Lab. So his name is Michel, and don't be afraid to approach him. He's very friendly. We came with the idea of Informal Lab because, well, we do enjoy spending a lot of time at work, but we actually enjoy sharing more with the community. We don't want to be an insular entity, but we want to learn and reinforce the knowledge that we have and share the knowledge we have with people in the Montreal community. So we wanted to be in an informal way, where people are comfortable to meet each other, to have a drink, and to collaborate, and maybe find projects that they can work together on. For an informal lab, for an informal event, it actually has a bit of a structure. It's my fault. I'm a bit of a control freak sometimes. So what we propose with this event, it's a sun cassette. It's in different spaces. Next time will not be at Intact. It might be actually just in a bar, to be less corporate. And what we want to propose is to always have a main speaker, and then we have a break, a socializing break, and then we have a panel of expertise from different companies that can give different insights in a particular theme. The next theme that we have is going to be the new narratives and how technology is building new narratives or introducing new narratives in our lives, like augmented reality, and IoT, and how this fake news actually also is changing our way how we view the world in social media. Today our main speaker is Janelle Estes. I said it well. Yeah. Thank you. And she was saying she's going to use a lavalier, not a microphone, because she feels that she will start singing with the microphone. So I kind of want to give her the microphone and say the lavalier doesn't work and test her singing skills. She's joining us from, she flew from, especially for this event, from Boston. She's from UserTesting.com. She's the VP for Solution Consulting, and she's helping companies create great experience for over a decade. There's another thing that you should know about Janelle. She worked for 10 years at Nielsen Norman Group, where she also hosted the Usability Week for Norman and Nielsen. So she's a seasoned speaker. She came also with her friend Kevin, also from UserTesting.com. If you want to see how the UserTesting.com tool works, please talk with Dave. Kevin. I'm a bit nervous. So I will not give the microphone to Janelle, but she can use the small microphone.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just going to switch.
Good job, Raoul!
All right. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, in the back? Okay, great. So thank you so much for having us and having me here to speak tonight. I'm really excited to be here to talk with you about something that I'm actually very passionate about as a researcher, which is enabling teams to get customer insights even if you're not a seasoned or academic researcher in the traditional sense. So it's sort of it's a topic that can get a little heated sometimes with professionals, but I'm in the camp of enabling people to gather customer insights, even if they don't have that formal background. And I'll kind of give you some reasonings and explain a little bit more. Before I do that, though, I want to just kind of run through the agenda and what I'm hoping to do today. So I want to talk about the importance of customer experience. I feel like I'm going to be preaching to the choir with this one, so I'm not going to be spending too much time there. And then I also want to talk with you about the customer-centered design process. And this really is a compilation of the different ways that our customers at UserTesting use our platform and other tools and methods to gather insights throughout the entire design and development process for their product development cycles. My role at UserTesting is I actually spend a lot of time with our customers, and I understand what they're trying to accomplish, and then I help them use our solution to meet those needs. So it sounds very vague as I say that out loud, but really what it means is that they come to us and they say, hey, I'm looking to solve this problem. I'm looking to drive more traffic to my site, or I'm looking to increase conversions. And we say, okay, well, here's how you would do that. Here's how you would get insight into how to make that happen with the UserTesting platform. So I'll give you some examples a little bit later. And then I want to talk a little bit about enablement, and then we'll get into Q&A. How many of you have seen this graphic before? It's like one of my favorites of all time. So if you haven't seen it, it's hard to see from here. But essentially talks about the different players in a project or at an organization, including the customer, and their sort of expectations of what would be built based on needs. So you can see, I think some of my favorite ones of how the product was supported is the tree completely cut down. And how the project was documented, right? We know that story very well. But actually what I really love about this graphic is that this is how the customer explained it, which is the 3-ladder swing. And then this is actually what the customer needed, which is the tire. So this is one of the foundational rules of usability and user experience research, is that we can listen to our customers, but sometimes they don't actually know what they need. And sometimes what they say they need is actually different from what they really need. And so that's really our job as people in the user experience space, is to understand and to recognize those opportunities, and to make sure that we're creating designs that are matching our customer needs and not necessarily just following instructions or their direction. All right, so this is a slide that gets a lot of iPhone and phone photos when I pull it up. Mainly because it helps classify, or at least talk about the ROI of customer experience. It's a squishy thing to measure, and a lot of times in order to get funding for this type of research or this type of practice, you have to present some sort of business case. So this is some studies that have been done by Forrester Research over the last 8 to 9 years, I believe. So what they do is they have a customer experience index, and they rate a bunch of different companies across many different industries. They rate their customer experience, so they give them an actual score. And then they look at things like how well these companies are performing. And what they found is that the people who are performing well in the CX index, so they're scoring well, they're providing great experiences, those guys are the ones that are performing financially as well. So it not only is just a nice thing to do for people and customers, make them happy, but it also has real business impact. So higher revenues, more engagement, and more loyalty, decreased costs, all of those nice things. Another stat from Forrester. I'm a big fan of Forrester. Little known fact about me, my first job was at Forrester Research, and I was answering the phone in the customer support department for people who couldn't figure out how to log into the website. That is how my career started and why I got interested in this field. So, they're kind of a foundation of my career. So a lot of companies think CX is a top priority, but not a lot of companies are delivering great experiences. I don't necessarily like this statistic because it feels sort of negative. It's like, oh, only 1%. But there's so much opportunity here, and that's what we're here for, and that's what I'm excited about. So that's exactly what we do at UserTesting. We help companies create great experiences for their customers. And the way that we do that, we have a solution. How many of you are familiar with UserTesting? Okay, so probably half the room. So for those of you that are familiar, bear with me, I'll kind of walk through this fairly quickly. So we offer a solution that actually addresses a lot of the problems that you might all be facing in your practice and getting customer experience sort of operationalized and accepted in your organization. So one of the things, or some of the challenges here is that oftentimes we're looking at a lot of data, right? We have a lot of web analytics or just usage analytics. We also have internal opinions from people who may or may not be your target customer, usually not. And what we do is we help make sense of that data and those opinions by putting putting you in your customer's shoes and having them tell you the story of how they interact with and use your product. We also do this across many different devices, so as the customer journey becomes a broader experience rather than a single touch point or a single point in time, we can track that experience over many different devices and over time. And we can turn around those results really quickly. So we have a panel of participants that will provide feedback, or you can bring your own participants. And I believe the statistic is like 90% of our studies are filled within 2 hours. So it's nearly instantaneous, and I've seen that with my own eyes, and it's actually pretty incredible. But the thing that actually gets me most excited about user testing is that it helps bridge sort of the silos between different groups, different organizations, and more of these old school processes where you have to get approval for a study and make sure the test plan is perfect and make sure you've got the right recruits and then rent out a lab and then make sure everybody's okay with the test plan. And after a while, you're losing time, but also it's just a drag. Nobody wants to do that. You have a question you want to answer, you can do that really quickly with user testing. And I touched on all of these things. We have a panel, we have recording, we record screens, computers, and mobile devices, and all of this is stored on the cloud, so you can access the videos there. I'll show you an example so you can see the output. But this is essentially what we're replacing. So how many of you have sat in a lab either as the moderator or as an observer? Okay, like maybe 25%. This was my world for a long time. And when I was at NNG, I had to do a lot of independent research. So research that wasn't for customers, it was actually for my own seminars and the papers that I would write. And so I would rent out lab spaces and I would spend days in a lab, which anybody who's ever done a full day of moderating, there's a moment of silence for that, because it is a very tiring experience. But what I started doing actually when I was at Nielsen Norman Group was using user testing to do my research, because I could do that, I could run that in the background while I was doing other things and then watch the videos later. And I ended up getting the same quality of data, just in a different way. And that's essentially how it sounds lame, but like a love story, but that's essentially how I kind of fell in love with user testing. I've been with the company now for 3 years. But this is really just an output of what you get when you run a study with user testing. So you can see this is a participant screen, and I'm going to play a video for you. They're going to be talking out loud. You'll hear that person talking out loud. And she's providing some feedback about the Hershey's website. This up here is the little taskbar. That's where they see the instructions of what they're being asked to do or what feedback you want them to provide.
What would you like to change about this site? I would like more pictures on the recipes page. I would like the ability to buy these delicious looking suckers on the front page. I want them now, but I can't get them because all it lets me do is see them. It doesn't let me buy them. So it lets me pin it on Pinterest, but that's not what I want to do. I want to eat it.
So while it's comical, which it is, that's what I love about user testing, is that people are in their natural environment, so they're very willing to provide lots of different, very off-the-cuff and candid feedback. So funny, but also a real problem. But there's no call to action, and even if they can't sell them on the website, can we route them to another place where they can buy them? I'm sure that the person who manages the website would not be happy to see that video. Or somebody who's tracking performance on the website. These are our customers. I won't spend a lot of time here. So I talked about the different phases of the design and development process and how we can provide insight along that path. This is kind of a standard process. I think a lot of us have something similar to this. This looks familiar to people. Sort of like discovery, and then designing, and iterating, and then developing, and then launching, and optimizing, and monitoring it over time. So let me walk through a lot of different use cases where you can get value from user testing. I like to actually think about the product design and development process as more like this. It's easier than those big fancy words on the previous slide. You start out with a lot of information and a lot of data and a lot of decisions that have to be made and concepts that need to be vetted. And it's almost like a funnel until you get to something that's a little bit more final and kind of hits the right spot. Of course, this is not a linear process that ends right there. We're constantly looping, but it's an interesting visualization. So the first phase in the product design and development process is actually to assess the opportunity. So this is one of the things that I really encourage our customers to do more of. A lot of times we think we already know the solution to the problem. And in fact, we haven't actually defined the problem very well to begin with. So doing a lot more discovery, really understanding the context, what people are struggling with, where the opportunity is, what the problem is, and really defining that and getting people to be on the same page so you're all designing for the same solution. And this type of research can be done without any interface. So we don't need a design. You can have more of an interview style approach. You can have people look at competitors. You can have people show you how they behave when they're doing an activity. In this case, we were working on trying to understand how people went about car shopping and the considerations that they made when they were doing their research. It's a longer video. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I just want you to get a sense of the type of data that you can collect. And this is our mobile recorder because we did this on a mobile device.
We have a 10-month-old daughter. The time came where we actually started having to drive her back and forth to daycare. We felt that the previous car that we traded in, our Honda Fit, was just not safe enough. And I literally made spreadsheets and did research among every 3-row passenger SUV and crossover. And after numerous test drives, crunching, etc., I decided to go back to a Nissan dealership and purchase a new 2017 Pathfinder Platinum. So
you get the idea of what we're getting at here. We're trying to understand motivations, behaviors, needs, and really just digging at really understanding the customer before we're defining a problem and before we're defining a solution. All right, so the next sort of step in the design and development process, once you've defined the problem, I know this is probably not news to everybody, but we've got to come up with some ideas or some concepts. This is also an area where I see our customers not spending enough time. So I really encourage our customers to look at lots of different ideas and concepts. If you can sketch something out, if you can even explain something in words and put that in front of people and have them react to it, it's so much better than starting the design and development process and moving too far down the funnel before realizing that you haven't designed what you actually need to design. So some ways that you can do this, this is going to look familiar to you, which is prototype testing. So we can do this type of testing. We can, if you can host it somewhere, we can send people to it. We can get feedback on it. So Azure, Envision is the other one that a lot of our customers use. So people can comment on different level fidelities of prototypes. But a really fun use case is this type of idea where you're trying to understand people's reactions to different products. So we had a customer, I can't name the name, but they were interested in people's reactions to this new smart speaker that was supposedly coming out to the market. Are anybody familiar with this? It's called Jibo. No? Okay. So it's a cute little robot that actually behaves almost like I don't want to say a person, but it does have a little bit of a personality. And this customer was really interested in what were people thinking of the marketing around this? Like when this thing was being presented in a commercial or in an ad, how were people reacting to that? So they had people go to YouTube and watch the commercial for this product and comment out loud.
Jibo or Hibo, first switch over back to the home.
This is your toothbrush.
Never heard it.
These are your things. But these are the things that matter. And somewhere in between is this guy.
Oh, it's really cute.
Introducing Chibo.
Oh, it has little eyes.
Say hi, Chibo. Hi, Chibo.
It's adorable. First of all, I love the laugh and the voice is really sweet.
He's the world's best cameraman. By intelligently tracking the action around him, you can independently take video and photos.
That is super neat.
Without your view.
I really, really like that. It can track us so long. I've never seen anything like that before.
He's a hands-free helper. You can talk to him, and he'll
I never escape one of these without some sort of technical. Here we go. So the interesting thing about that type of research is that we're not looking at an interface, we're not looking at usability per se, but we're really just trying to understand people's reactions, emotional reactions to products, and whether they resonate with the brand or resonate with the messaging. It's funny because we did this with, I think we ran, I want to say like 30 people through it. And half of the people were like this woman who was like, this is the cutest thing I've ever seen, I want this. And then the other half were like, this is creepy, I don't want anything to do with this speaker, get it out of my house. So it was interesting to see the different reactions. All right. So, and then the final stage really of any sort of design and development process, and I know I'm simplifying this more than I probably should. It is much more complex and it's much more time-consuming, lots of decisions that need to be made. But really, it's once you launch something, how do you optimize it? And I talked a little bit earlier about the journey. And what we're finding with our customer base, too, is that our customers aren't defining their experiences by single touch points and interactions. They're looking at the entire multi-step process across time and across channels and across devices. So this was a study that we did on FedEx. And what we had the person do in the study was, multiple people do this, but set up a shipment using the mobile app, drop it off at a FedEx store, and then check the tracking a little bit later. So this is a pretty standard use case and workflow for their type of customer. So let me just show you a quick highlight reel from this study.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Select my options, FedEx envelope or FedEx pack. I honestly don't know the difference. It looks the same to me. It looks like they're both envelopes. I just went into the store and I asked to print out the shipping label for this package. And what actually happened was the representative at the store told me that this location doesn't offer that service actually, even though the app told me it did. And that I would actually have to go to another location that is 12 minutes away from where I already am. Seems like I can just click this link to track the status of this shipment online. I can use this following. Yep, go ahead and click on this. Oh, great. So it looks like that it just automatically gave me the tracking for it without me actually inputting the number.
So that was over a couple of days. What I love, my favorite part about that video as a geeky researcher is listening to her talk about her frustration and not being able to drop off the shipment at the original location she went to and hearing her keys jingling in the background. Did anybody else catch that? Like so much context. So this is where I'm going to tell you that you don't have to be a super seasoned and schooled researcher to actually gather customer insights. This is an interesting way to look at it. So without sounding too much like a commercial for user testing, I want to show you quickly how you can set up a study within minutes, and it's 4 screens. So let's say that you have something that you want to study, and you're not a super educated, I don't want to say educated, but you don't have decades of experience in doing research. That wasn't a nice thing to say. Really what you do is you go to our website, you figure out what you want to test. So you can choose to test your prototype, your website, or your app. Or we can do unreleased apps or released apps. Then you choose who you want to test with. So do you want to use people on our panel, or do you want to bring your own participants? From there, you choose how many people you want, what device you want them to use, and any sort of demographic information that's important to you. So location might be important, or a specific type of mobile device might be important. And then you choose what you want them to do. Send them to a URL, give them a scenario, and then write your tasks and your follow-up questions. So it's really quite simple, and it's a few minutes to set up and launch. Anybody heard of Tomer Sharon? He's written a couple of books. One of them is called It's Our Research, which is a great book about research practices within organizations. He used to be at Google, now he's at WeWork, and he's developed this program or this platform at WeWork called Polaris. And what this does is it enables people to share what they're learning in their research results with the entire organization. So one of the problems that we see with our customer base is that they're collecting all this information, but sometimes it doesn't get used, or people don't access it, or it kind of gets stale. So he's trying to create a solution to that problem of being able to allow people just sort of proliferate the knowledge that everybody has about customers. It's not just the UX research team, but it's the marketing team. It's the analytics team. It's all the people that are collecting information about customers. So some ideas for enabling everyone. So I asked Kevin beforehand if he got the connection here. He didn't, so I'm going to have to explain, because I have two daughters who are 4 and 7, and they love Frozen, and Elsa in particular. And anybody familiar with the Let It Go song? Yeah.
Do you want the microphone?
No, you do not want to. I've probably heard this song like maybe 3,000 times, 2 little girls. But that's how I feel about sort of enabling the organization, is like not holding this thing as so precious and near and dear to our heart, but really just making sure everyone, or at least a large majority of people, are comfortable with the idea of collecting feedback. Actually, pretty passionate about stop calling it research and just calling it insights and feedback from your customers, because that makes it more accessible to people. So ideas for enabling people. Read. So give book recommendations. Share books, have a library. In particular, the ones about usability testing are helpful. The Steve Krug books are great for people who are newer to the field and trying to understand basic concepts. So, aside from this, there are blogs and lots of other things as well. Also consider attending or hosting learning events. So these are great ways to network, but also to learn. And we do this a lot at UserTesting. This is one of my favorite customer stories. So we were working with a big box retailer, and what they had was a big product organization, and they had 2 UX researchers who were the bottlenecks for all of the research or insights that needed to be collected around the product. So they were the gatekeepers. They had to review everything. They had to approve everything. They came to us and they're like, there's such a backlog. We need to get this insight to people, but we can't do it ourselves. We want to train the team. So we went on site and we did a workshop. It was 4 hours long. We set people up with user testing accounts, and we walked them through the best practices of how to set up a study from a research point of view, as well as best practices with the platform. And what we saw, right after that was a crazy spike in usage. And to me, this is what spells success for user testing, and even for the UX organization at large, is enabling people to get more access to more insights. We had a panel at one of our events. We have customer events. And a woman there, she worked at Ralph Lauren, and she basically was like, at the end of the day, we're not building a rocket ship, most of us aren't, or we're not building something that's so, life and death, if you will. I know that's a generalization. But the idea is that she's like, I would love it if anybody came to me and said, I just want to get some information about our customers and how they react to things. And there are ways that we can control that. And we work with really sophisticated teams at companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Google. And they're like, we don't trust everyone to do this. And so how do we allow this to happen without losing too much control? And so some recommendations that I have, and you can access these templates actually, the URL is here, I'll share these slides afterwards. But set up a list of templates. Doesn't have to be through user testing, you can set up your own library of templates. For common studies that are run, we have a list of them that are available, common use cases. But this gives people a library and guardrails to kind of work within. And then the other thing too is, if you want, I don't think this is a necessary step, but consider some sort of review process. So that's what some teams at our customer sites do, is they let people set up tests, but then they go through and review and make sure the questions are written correctly, there's not a lot of bias, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last part of all of this is to have fun. That's what this picture might look before. This is a great community. You learn a lot from each other, people who are really passionate about this field. And so just getting out there and sharing your knowledge and sharing your experience and expertise is what makes this community so great. So I'm going to open it up to questions now, if anybody has any. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You can sing now.
I think it's already open.
Hello. So I guess I have a question less about user testing, but about, yes, about user testing, but not about
the actual
user. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about doing the research and everything, but let's say on a smaller scale, for example, I work in IT, and we're developing a lot of programs for our the employees to use, and I found that it's sometimes difficult to get the employees to agree to work with us to get that information and that research. And so I was wondering, in your experience, what's the best way to kind of get that information from our users that are very busy and have a lot of things to do and don't necessarily have the time to sit down with us? Yeah,
so it sounds to me like it's more of a getting them to just spend time with you. That seems to be the main kind of gateway. So I would think about what reward would be most appealing to them. So a lot of times, and it doesn't sound like it's the case here, but correct me if I'm wrong, but just being able to be involved in research and to have their voice heard, because they're probably using something and they probably have a list of 5 things they love and 5 things they hate, but they really want to share with somebody. It doesn't sound like that's the case really, but sometimes that can be reward enough. But other ideas that I've heard of people doing with internal employees, because you oftentimes can't give them money. So doing things like, I don't know, like passes, free lunch passes to the cafeteria, or free parking for the month, or we have people who, will have people choose a charity that they would then make a donation to on their behalf. So not necessarily paying them outright, but giving them some sort of incentive to join and provide feedback. The other thing you can do is make it really short. So maybe you set up in the lunchroom, or maybe you set up, something where you can intercept people for 5 or 10 minutes, so it doesn't feel like this big commitment of I got to go to an hour or 90-minute usability test session. You can just sort of sweep them in during their lunch break. That might be another way to go about it too. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
Maybe I'll have a comment. I work for a big telco where we do UX design, and both externally facing and internally facing as well. And so we face that with all the internal facing with call center agents. And so if you just try to get people of their own volition to come, they're looking at their watch and they're saying, oh my God, I'm on the clock here. The only thing that really works as opposed to carrots. And I don't need to be too mean about it, but to go to the higher ups and sell business cases with just massive value to do all of this stuff. And then from top down, they say, do it. And then you can and they give you the resources.
That's actually a great point. If it's part of what they have to do, maybe it's not written into their goals or something to provide feedback a certain number of times a year or something. If it's mandated from the top.
It's really rolling now. So now we've got that awareness, just the value of user testing and so on.
Right.
Now people are kind of hungry to do it. They're hungry to have their people do it.
Yeah.
They're carving out time. They're carving out the space.
Yeah, that's great.
So just quickly, when you're developing a product or it's something that like you showed in your diagram, you have like a lot of phases and it gets more specific. Through those different steps of user testing, do you tend to rely on the same populations, or do you try to vary it? And I'm really just thinking, because in my experience, I have very, very little experience with this. Sometimes you get some part of the population having very negative reactions, others have no issue with it. So how do you avoid basically designing just for your testers, as opposed to just trying to get enough insight so that it will work for the broad population, let's say?
Sure. So I think it starts with how you do your recruiting for people that you want to bring in for the study. So making sure that you have a well-defined target audience and that you're recruiting for those demographics. And usually and those sort of attributes. And usually what I recommend is having a good mix of people too. So if you have people that run the gamut of not tech savvy at all to super tech savvy, you want to have a mix of those people in your studies, because that's really how the population kind of breaks down. It's like there's just such a mix. Now, if your audience is super high tech and those are the people you're targeting, then by all means, you really only want to test with those types of people. But if it's like general population stuff, you really want a nice swath, a nice mix of people. In terms of testing with the same people over and over again, typically, which I feel like you might have been implying there, like having a set of testers that
basically
kind of walk
have
through.
the same set of testers go through basically 2 or 3 iterations of the product.
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to it. I think there are cases where you would want to do that, but really, personally think that there's more cons to that approach than pros, because what happens is those people start to become professional testers in a sense, and they start to get to know your product and your process too well. So you almost want a set of fresh eyes every time you have an iteration or a prototype. There are instances where we do carry the same people across many different iterations, and that's usually for more complex things where people need maybe some training before they're actually allowed to use the system. So just for cost and time reasons, it makes sense to train those people and then have them move through the entire study and all the different iterations. But I would, if you're just doing a standard test and you're iterating many times, I would recommend using fresh eyes each time.